Hey everyone, and welcome to the Blue Jay Center podcast presented by the Sick Podcast Network. Cole Whiston, Rob Pentalaman. The Jays, are they headed to the World Series? We'll get into that right after the break.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Blue Jays Center.
Bautista drives it deep left field. Gone!
The sickest Toronto Blue Jays podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Turn off the podcast just yet. I obviously am a bit hyperbole when I said that. The Jays, though, take the first two of a 4-game set against the New York Yankees. That's what we're talking to you about today, and it was all thanks to a massive moment from George Springer, bottom of the 7th, up by 1, and Springer hits a grand slam, his second of the game last night, to finally put that one to bed. And obviously the Jays got the third one tonight, coming up here in an hour, and then we go for the fourth one tomorrow. The Jays sit 1 game back of the AL East division leaders, which is the New York Yankees, who, as we all know, went to the World Series last year. So, yes, it's a bit of a stretch, and Baseball Reference would say it's a 88% stretch, considering we have a 2.1% chance of winning the World Series this year. But that was my explanation. So, Rob, we're getting a vibe check. The Blue Jays, are they going to win the AL East this year?
The vibes are immaculate. We'll talk about the AL East later. That might be a little getting ahead of ourselves right now, but right now the team is playing awesome stuff from your Toronto Blue Jays. First of all, happy Canada Day to you, Prof. I don't know if you were one of the few lucky ones like us that had a long weekend. I got the Monday off too, so got to enjoy some R&R and some awesome Blue Jays baseball. And man, it was just such a vibe watching that game yesterday. I considered the idea of heading down to the park, but I cowered it out, and boy, do I regret it, because that looked like a fun time to be at the yard yesterday. I mean, it just feels like everyone's saying it feels like from the crowd that the vibes are just immaculate right now around this ball club, which is something that we haven't seen in really almost 2 years. I mean, the last time they were good was in 2023, but even then, that was sort of a contentious year. The team was underperforming and people were upset, but right now it really does feel like the first time in forever that this team and the people who run it, both the manager and the guys up top, have a high approval rating, and it's just great to see. We know what the opposite looks like. We know how ugly those days were. They weren't that long ago, so I'm really happy that the Blue Jays are kicking ass, winning the first 2 games of this Yankees series, and hopefully by the time this podcast drops, they win the series, or heck, maybe even sweep it if Jimmy and the guys behind the scenes take their time and release this after this Yankees series. So yeah, the vibes are immaculate, my guy. How you feeling?
I can't believe this team that started 2025 exists on July 2nd, 2025. We've had podcasts in this season that were the complete opposite of this current feeling. We had a podcast 2 weeks ago where I was still, not exactly all in on this Toronto Blue Jays team. And we're going to get into a bunch of stuff later in the show. Being the trade deadline, speaking about all in, are we all in? We're going to go back to our preseason over-unders. We're officially past the halfway point of 2025. We're also going to talk about some injury updates with some guys coming back, some guys that are currently injured. And then we're going to preview the rest of the July schedule, which, teaser, looks really good. So this could just be the start of a really great month for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. You mentioned that it took you even last pod, you weren't so sold in this team, and I think the reason why you weren't so sold in this team is because up and down you look at it and it's like this isn't the greatest Blue Jays team we've ever seen. I think this team has sort of gone contrary to the grain of the Bo Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. build, whereas you have these teams that look really good on paper, but yet they just consistently underperform and the results are just not there, and everyone's frustrated. This team has been the opposite of all those teams. This team has overperformed their projections. They have been their team. They've always been the team that's below 50th percentile outcomes. This has been 70th, 80th percentile outcome. The Blue Jays overperforming. We just haven't seen that happen in a Vlad Bo build. I mean, it's just so refreshing to see. We can go up and down the roster, but even yesterday, you just look at that game yesterday. They're forced to throw in a guy, Justin Brule, in a big spot against the top of the Yankees order. Are you nuts? That's what I was thinking. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Rain Man, Prof, but it's the scene where, I mean, some listeners might know what I'm talking about, where Rain Man Raymond drops the sticks or whatever it was, and he just goes, "Uh-oh." That was my reaction watching Justin Verlander go out there. But yeah, they find a way to just win games, and obviously the header was up there just a moment ago. George Springer being the Blue Jays' best hitter to this date, to this point of the season. I mean, I think that's absolutely incredible considering the conversation. And honestly, I don't even think our discourse about him was wrong. I mean, I'm glad that he
No.
proved us wrong, but he looked legitimately done. And now all of a sudden, being the best hitter on the team by OPS plus, that's just wild, man.
Yep. Oh, I completely agree. Before the season started, and I'll correlate these both together, everybody and their mother had the Jays finishing fourth, and some of us on this podcast in the AL East, and some of us on this podcast would have agreed with that projection. Some of us believed in the fact that we could finish fifth in the AL East this year.
Yep.
And the huge part to this is George Springer, and I know I have an alliteration here with Springer surprise, but he legitimately is probably the biggest surprise for this Blue Jays team in 2025, and I'll get you to get your opinion on that right after. But before the season, everything suggested he was cooked. The age didn't look right. The baseball savant didn't look right. We had a long sample of him being a well below league average hitter. And you can go to Twitter. Anybody that's listening to this podcast or watching this podcast can go to Twitter and look up Chris Black or look up George Springer in your search bar, and you're going to find people trying to come to a conclusion on why George Springer is having the outbreak that he is this year. And really the answer is there isn't an answer. He is just simply fundamentally a significantly better baseball player this year than what he has been in what feels like 2 to 3 years. Like, he might be having a career year in terms of as a Toronto Blue Jay. We thought this contract was going to be untradeable, and now not only is it tradable, but it's untradeable in the sense that we're full on going to be buyers at the end of July. So George Springer is going to be a part of that, part of the heart of the lineup, because he's exactly what we need to replicate at the trade deadline. We need to get somebody else who could do what George Springer's doing right now. But him being a better hitter than Vladimir Guerrero Jr. On July 2nd of 2025 after Vladdy gets paid $500 million. And that's no slight on Vladdy. Vladdy has a 130 OPS plus. Like, it's just completely mind-boggling that George Springer is having the year that he's having. And the fact that, like, he won't be in the AL Comeback Player of the Year conversations, because even on the Toronto Blue Jays roster, there's another guy who you could point to in Bo Bichette that should be in that conversation. And even Bo isn't in the conversation anymore because of guys like Jacob deGrom and whoever. But this team has done a complete 180, and it's now been a full sample size of like 2+ months of them consistently performing at this level, outside of the odd valley here and there, but that's baseball. Like, you get the odd valleys. The Dodgers have lost 30+ games this year. Like, that, it happens. But this team just feels different. And again, yeah, I'm still not completely sold that it's 2021 different, but like, I don't know what it would take for me to get there. Like, I guess just a larger sample of all this happening, and maybe some positive regression from Anthony Santander if he comes back and whatnot. But like, yeah, this is unbelievable. I want to get the fans' opinions before Rob and I give our predictions. But comment below if you think the Jays are going to compete for the division at the end of the year. Do you think the Jays can win the division this year? The odds officially are, I think, like 2-1 on the betting platforms, but yeah, we're 1 game back. We sweep the series, we'll be 1 game ahead of the Yankees for the division. And as I was saying,
tonight, they'll be in first place when they wake up tomorrow.
Right, because we'll have the tiebreaker over the Yankees. That's exactly. So to even be tied at the end of tonight is a crazy thought process. And this team, in terms of just roster to roster compared to the Yankees, I would say we have an equal amount of flaws. We have different flaws in different areas, but I think they all even out. So I think the division is definitely up for grabs. What do you think, Rob?
Absolutely is up for grabs. I want to give my take, which might be a little controversial a little bit after, but I just want to reiterate some of the numbers that you mentioned. They were alluding to since May 8th. It's a 102 win pace since May 8th. Sorry, 97 win pace 102 since May 8th, and since May 1st, going back a little bit further, or April 30th, they're a 97 win pace. So this is legitimately 2+ months of just really good
Right.
baseball.
And
And
if you keep it
yeah,
all the season, we're on a 90 win pace.
yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. Like for them to make the playoffs at this point, which is obviously we're talking about the wild card here, all they have to do is just be 3 games better than one of the Angels, Mariners, or the Guardians. I think it is. I mean,
Yeah.
at this point, this team was an underdog to make the playoffs. Right now, like that, making the playoffs at this point is just that should be. I don't want to say a foregone conclusion, but like it
Yeah.
should be. It should be.
Officially
Like, they should absolutely be better than those teams and 2 of those 3 teams. I mean, they're obviously a favorite to make it at this point. Playing
officially
awesome
it's
baseball that they have.
65%.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
on Fangraphs, 65%. I think it's a little lower on Baseball Reference, but regardless, they're in a good spot. And here's my take about the division. And I want to ask you this, and I've kept this concealed. I haven't mentioned this take to anybody because I know it's going to be controversial, and I know it's just something that the masses just don't agree with. But I mean, do you think that we're maybe making a little bit too big of a deal about the division thing? And let me give my thesis and my points before you attack me. But
Yep.
here's the thing: prior to the third wild card, winning the division was so valuable because if you didn't win your division, you were subject to a one and done playoff game where flip a coin and that's your season. You know, we
Yep.
saw the Pittsburgh Pirates in 2015 win 104 games or something and lose in the wild card game to a much weaker Cubs team. And I remember that game like yesterday. And winning your division would guarantee you like bypass that wild card round. However, now with this third wildcard system, winning the division on its own is not sufficient to bypass the wildcard round. You have to be one of the top 2 teams in the American League, which right now you look at, I think the Tigers are 6 games up on the Jays for that lead. The Astros are 4 games up with a tiebreaker because they already swept us. So the thing is that if the Blue Jays were to win the division, which is obviously great, it would be the first one in a decade. They would still have to play the wild card round, most likely. And here's the thing, Prof, that's the scariest of it all if they were the 3rd seed, so that AL East winner, the 3rd seed, guess what would the playoff bracket be? They would be a wild card home series against the Seattle Mariners, which where have we seen that before? Where have we seen that before? A wild card series at home against Seattle. So my point is that, yeah, it'd be nice. And obviously to get to a bye, which is the goal, you have to win your division. But ultimately, are we making a little bit too big of a deal about being first in the AL East? Like, obviously, it's great. You beat the Yankees, screw them. You beat the Rays, great. Bragging rights all galore, but it's most likely than not, they're still going to have to play that wild card series. What do you think?
You're right. That's a very unfortunate burst of a bubble for sure.
I apologize.
Yeah, and just to pull up for people, this is the 49th season for the Toronto Blue Jays as a franchise. They've only won the division 6 times. They have only won it 1 time in the 21st century, and that was 2015, which everybody remembers, of course. They killed it in the 80s, late 80s and early 90s in terms of winning the division. They won the division every other year, if not every year. So here's my thing. You're logically correct. In all likelihood, right now, even if we win the division, we're in all likelihood not going to catch the Tigers or the Astros, which means you're playing in the wild card, which means the division winning really did you nothing at the end of the day.
Well, all it did was guarantee you a home series.
Right, which really has not worked out well for us anyway. But
we saw the Jays play a playoff home series against the team they'd be playing, and it didn't
exactly.
go well.
Exactly. Here's what I'm going to say, though, as my rebuttal. It's got to be for the vibes, just for the plot.
Yeah, I'm with it.
Yeah,
you
haven't won the division in a decade. This core hasn't won the division, period. I think it puts an extra chip on your shoulder like, hey, we're the guys now. We got something to prove. You outdid the Yankees. You outdid the Rays. You outdid the Orioles, all of which were predicted to do better than you at the start of the season. You outdid the Red Sox. A lot of guys were picking the Red Sox to the division, I being one of them. So, yeah, you get to have bragging rights out of all of them, which could add, just some mojo in a home playoff series. Here's the other thing. Look at the Jays' home record this year. They're fantastic at home. our ballpark is no longer a pitcher-friendly ballpark with the renovations. We're making it a hitter-friendly ballpark. Our players are performing better at home than they are on the road. It's becoming a little bit concerning.
Don't say that too loud, Prof. They might do an investigation. Don't
yeah,
say that too loud.
exactly. I was just gonna say it's becoming a possible concern on how the splits are on the road. Like it's becoming just a little bit. It's something to keep an eye on for the rest of the way. Because we're on a 90 win pace, so there's not a whole lot to look at. But if you're gonna look at something, it's the road splits. So that's my counter, is that unlike the first time we played Seattle at home in a wild card series, there's some other factors that are in our favor this year that I like. Obviously, there's some other factors that are not in our favor still, including who's starting game 1 and who's starting game 2 for the respective teams. But whatever, that doesn't matter right now because that's not what we're focused on. But yes, I don't think we're making too much of the division, but you're correct in the fact that in all likelihood we won't be better than the Astros or the Tigers unless both of them fall off, which, by the way, both of them could fall off. So I would say that, Baseball Reference puts 2% chance at the chance we win the World Series this year. I would put at around a 10% chance that the Astros or Tigers have a downfall in the second half, because neither one of them was expected to win the division this year. I know the Astros do every year, but just like the Rays, it just seems like they lose people and then they figured it out, and then we all are proven wrong at the end of 162 again. But that's just reality. The Astros aren't supposed to be able to win the division again this year, and neither were the Tigers. This is definitely a major jump up for the Tigers, who really past Tarek Skubal have a bunch of kind of somebodies in the rotation. So all of a sudden those guys regress back to their career norms, or go back to being an old veteran who had a good stretch of baseball and then that was it. Like, that can all happen. So definitely have to win the division, just because I think from a mindset standpoint it would mean a lot.
And overall, to rebut myself. Oh yeah, absolutely. To rebut myself too. I mean, if you want to get a buy in the wild card round, you have to win a division. That's obviously, if you want to get to point B, you got to go through point A first. We get that. And also, here's the thing. I mean, I made it seem just a while ago when I was like laying out my points that like 4 games is like a massive thing. Like 4 games with another series left. I mean, obviously they're gonna have a tiebreaker most likely, so it's probably an artificial 5 games, but it's not as if it's like completely untenable. I mean, the Blue Jays and the Yankees, the Yankees had an 8 game lead on the division not too long ago. So yeah, I think that would be sort of the rebuttal to my point. I just wanted to introduce that to the crowd because I do think that that's gone a little bit under the radar in my opinion.
We haven't actually talked about the question. Where did he put
division champs?
Yeah, where did he put the odds on the Jays winning the division?
To start the season, I had the Blue Jays finishing ahead of the Yankees and below the Rays. Right now, the Rays and the Jays have the same record, so I feel like as of this moment, I still have the Rays because I mean, obviously, nothing's completely changed my view that they're a better team to this point. They've also beaten us head to head, so maybe that affects us a bit. So, and then obviously the Yankees. Yes, the Blue Jays can win tonight and technically be ahead of them in the standings, but overall, the underlying numbers still suggest that the Blue Jays are worse than the Yankees, both pitching and offensively. The Yankees definitely have some holes, and they're on a tailspin. They start off the season really good. They've kind of regressed to more so to the team that I expected them to be at the beginning of the year, which was not as good considering all they've lost. Obviously, the Juan Soto subtraction, but also in the rotation. Max Fried has sort of supplanted Garrett Cole as the Cy Young candidate, although it was Andres Jimenez, your guy, taking the deep center yesterday. That was obviously awesome to watch.
And George Springer.
Yeah. So definitely a lot of things that maybe even the scales as of late, but ultimately, I still feel like the underlying stats suggest that they are still slightly better. I still believe the Rays were better, so they absolutely have a shot. I mean, literally, they win tonight.
Right.
They're first in the AL East, so you have to give them a shot. I do think that this team has avenues to improve. I do think that they can go out and get a legitimate, not necessarily an ace, because there's only handful of aces in the league. Nevertheless, the ones that are available at the deadline, but they can get a legitimate other pitcher. They're going to add a reliever. They always do. We can go through it when we preview the trade deadline. I do think that the Anthony Santander, Dalton Varsho, and Vlad's late season resurgence is going to happen at some point. So I do think that this Blue Jays team, despite the fact that they haven't been as good as their record to this point, I do think that there is a way they can ascend to the quality of team that can win a division. So this is a long-winded answer of saying it's possible, but I would still not pick them to win the division if I had to pick for the rest of the 80 games
Right.
or however many.
Right. And while I agree, I'll finish it on a positive note. They might not win the division, but I think the division race continues until the end of 162.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
don't think
it's
that the Rays or Yankees are good enough or going to be good enough to lap us and then make it an uncompetitive division race in August. I think the division will be in reach to the end of September. So that's all that should really matter to Blue Jays fans. But by all means, I want your guys' predictions, and we'll also comment that below. We're moving on, and that is to, well, if we're going to win the division, then we got to fix some holes. So on Sunday, we plan on doing our actual trade deadline teaser. Sunday at 8 o'clock, hopefully, here on the Blue Jay Center podcast presented by the Sick Podcast Network. With all three of us, James Price will be included in that one as well. But for today, to get you guys set, we have a little bit of a teaser. Rob and I are going to pick a name that we would like to target at the deadline for this Toronto Blue Jays team. And Rob, I'll start with you.
So I was thinking of what this team really needs, and right now, ironically, and this was completely counter to what we sort of predicted going into the year, I think they're, for the most part, okay on offense. I mean, you go position by position. I mean, third base was such a hole coming into the season, but Addison Barger, the way he's performing, and the continuing of positive production from Ernie Clement, I think that that's sort of your third base, duo going forward. I think that when Ernie Clement's not playing third base, he can sort of fill in a bit for Andres Jimenez, who hasn't quite had the offensive season we were projecting. But ultimately, I think you're okay there. Obviously, if Bo and Vlad and Kirk are healthy, they're playing every day at their respective positions. And then you move to the outfield. Dalton Varsho, if he's healthy, he's my center fielder every day. George Springer and Anthony Santander, if they're healthy, they're either splitting the right field position or the DH. The left field spot is a spot where I think that you could really go look and make a move there. And because right now you've obviously Jonathan Clase just got sent down, but you've kind of had the Nathan Lucas, Jonathan Clase platoon who've been solid. Obviously, the Miles Straw, he's been mostly in center, but you've had guys who have filled in there and have done okay. But I think that's the position where you can go and upgrade. And I think that Ross Atkins talked about yesterday when he did his subterranean press conference, which no one talked about or had any quotes from. I mean, it's kind of weird, but he looked at he wanted to add a right-handed bat. I think a right-handed bat would be perfect in that position. Guy with a 110, 115 OPS plus everyday hitter, that would be the goal. But ultimately, I think that their biggest need is actually the rotation. I think that for the first time in a while, you sort of have 5 reliable big league starters at the moment. However, we all know with Max Scherzer, we were all holding our breath after he came out of the game there.
But also, we're holding our breath on Eric Lauer as well.
Yeah,
exactly. I'm an Eric Lauer supporter, but we're holding our breath.
The guy 2 months ago that was basically a fringe major leaguer. You know what I mean? He was in Korea literally a year ago, right? So, I think absolutely. You look at the top 3. I think both Kevin Gausman, Jose Barrios, and Chris Bassett have done an adequate job of being a stabilizing force in rotation. But ultimately, you and I both know you need some upside. I think that's your biggest thing. You need some upside, and the guy that I'm pointing most to is Nathan Eovaldi on the Rangers. That's the guy that's sort of the top of my wish list. He's got a lot of pros that come with him. One, he's having an outstanding season this year. He would be your unanimous number 1 in a playoff series if it started tomorrow, if you were to add him, of course. The stuff is good. It's always been good with Nathan Eovaldi. He's pitched in the AL East and has been successful. He has pitched in the postseason and had a lot of success. He was excellent for the Rangers during their 2023 World Series run. He also is a guy whose contract might make sense for the Blue Jays. How many times have we talked about guys who the Jays should be targeting? And it's, well, they don't necessarily have the asset capital to go out and make a splash, but ultimately their muscle, their strength in trades are their finances. They can afford to take on money. Nathan Eovaldi, he's got 2 more years on his contract after this year, $25 million next year, $25 million the year after that. I think the Blue Jays could look to the Rangers and say, hey, listen, I know that our prospect capital is not necessarily top of the line, although it's gotten better recently. What we can do, you're a team that's obviously running a high payroll, you're struggling, you're multiple games out of a playoff spot. What we can do is we can take the majority of this contract off your hands for the next 2 years, reduce your payroll, and by doing so, we can sort of reduce the price of prospect capital going your way. I think that would be a trade that would make sense. The one downside with Nathan Eovaldi is that, unfortunately, and maybe he, this is good because he fits in with the rest of the guys. He's 35, and I just how many times have we talked about we just want a guy who's not 35? We don't want a
Right.
guy that's on the other side of 30. It'd just be nice to have some youth injected in this rotation. But ultimately, I think that the pros outweigh the cons. To me, he's my number one guy. A lot of people are going to talk about reliever. To me, I think reliever's almost like a foregone conclusion. This front office has prioritized relief pitching to the nth degree. They've given up significant asset capital to acquire relievers. They've acquired a late inning reliever every year they've been contending. To me,
Yeah.
that's a no-brainer. They're going to do that 100%.
Yeah.
But if you want to really make a deep cut and make this roster significantly better, raise the ceiling, I think to me a top-line starter is the way to go. And I think Nathan Eovaldi's my number one target.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you, and I assumed you were going to go a top-of-the-line starter, and I think at minimum you should be grabbing a number 3 starter or better.
Yeah.
I think grabbing a number 4 is
no
not
depth
guy.
Guy.
Is
No depth guy.
No depth.
It's
It's
gotta
not
be a
going to
guy
help you. Yeah.
You need a guy who's going to start in the postseason rotation
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. And I agree with you on the bullpen. I think that not only is it a foregone conclusion, but it isn't a ceiling raiser. You can get Emmanuel Clase, who might be available at this deadline, and that's not going to change your team from a good playoff team to a World Series contender. So I completely agree. And because you went pitcher, I'll go bat. Although I agree, getting a bat is complicated, to say the least, with this Blue Jays roster. But because Addison Barger and Addison Barger specifically can play the outfield, this is more of a, it would be great if we could get him and make him fit into an everyday lineup, and he's having a career year. But I don't expect it to happen, and I don't expect us to get a bat of this caliber at the deadline regardless. But Arizona's got 2 to offer. The best one in the market's going to be Eugenio Suarez, who I absolutely don't think we're going to get. But wouldn't that be great? He fits. Yep. I think he fits the best on this roster because you can move Addison to the outfield and play with that. And Suarez will obviously take DH reps and whatnot, and maybe even I don't know. I actually didn't look into whether or not he has played first base in his career, but I believe he either has or can or whatever. Anyways, he can fit. They got another guy on their team who might be overlooked at the deadline, who's having a career year. Not a righty bat, but a lefty bat. Josh Naylor. Obviously a Canadian boy. I think that one just makes a lot of sense. He's having a career year. He's always performed at the big leagues. He's performed in the postseason. If you remember him with the Guardians, he's played at that level before and succeeded, even as, rock the baby, off of Garrett Cole. So you can point to a number of things when it comes to Josh Naylor. A first baseman / corner outfielder, but a lefty bat. And I actually disagreed with Ross Atkins. I don't think we need a righty power bat. I do think we need a lefty power bat, considering none of our lefties hit for power as consistently as Josh Naylor does. So that's my problem, is that, Anthony Santander has not proven that he's going to be at the same caliber he was last year. Andres Jimenez has never been a bat-first guy. Dalton Varsho has never been a bat-first guy. Your only lefty that you can trust in a power situation is Addison Barger, but I don't think adding another lefty power bat would hurt you at all and make the lineup too complicated. So, again, any number of bats you're going to go acquire is going to be a complicated fit unless they are primarily a left fielder who hits from the right side. Like, unless you can find that guy, which it probably exists, but I don't know if that guy exists at a 115 OPS plus, or a guy who hits 25 home runs a year or whatnot. So Rob provided a pitcher, I provided a bat, but a pitcher, a front-end starter, is in all likelihood the Jays' number one target at the deadline. Now I want to get you, before we finish it off, the trade deadline show teaser part, I want to see, how all in should the Jays be? Is Trey Yesavage available for the right return at this deadline? Because here's the thing. You could argue, because of the Vladdy contract, you don't need to go all in. But I'll rebuttal that. Your contracts are ending. Bo Bichette is a free agent. Your starting rotation is 35 years old on average. And the AL is wide open. I think that, I agree it might not be a 100% all-in season, but is it a 80% all in? Is it a 90% all in? If the traditional all in, like if the traditional buying at the deadline is like 60%, like are we now at an 80 to 90% in terms of being all in for this year?
Yes, I think so. I think you have to be aggressive because,
Yeah,
like you mentioned, the team is good. The team is good, and obviously they're good, but they're the perfect kind of good where like, they're good, but they clearly need to make additions. If there's clearly holes that they have to fill if they want to get to the next level. And I think the biggest part of it is we've never seen the American League be this wide open before. I mean, how
right,
often can you count on, the Yankees and the Red Sox being as gettable as they look right now? And
right.
obviously, the Astros, they're fine. They're a good team. They've always been good, but like you look at that roster and it's like, yeah, this is as gettable as they've probably looked in a while too. I mean, obviously we saw last year the Detroit Tigers who won 85 games got them in the wild card
Exactly.
round. So it's it's never been this wide open for you. You're not a great team, but ultimately you don't have to be that great of a team to win the AL this year. You generally don't because there's the field is just not as elite as it usually is. So
Right.
from that perspective, you should definitely be aggressive. However, I think to me that there is a certain threshold that you have to, in a sense, I want to say cap. You mean obviously, I think that threshold to me is Trey Savage and Arjun Amala. Those are the two guys where I look at it and like,
Untouchable.
unless you're giving me a young, controllable star, I think that that's a little too rich for my blood. You know what I mean?
Right.
Unless and obviously like the word untouchable, untradeable. I hate that word because ultimately, I don't think anyone should be untouchable. I think that there are certain guys who the package that would have to come your way would have to be so incredibly immense that it makes it unlikely, even highly unlikely, almost impossible. But ultimately, you should be open to trading anyone. I mean, obviously, if the Pirates call and offer you Paul Skeens, you're putting Ye Savage and Arjun Amala in play. If
Yeah.
whatever Aaron Judge, if
Right.
whatever reason,
Right.
there are certain guys who obviously they have to be made available for. But ultimately, I think to me that's the threshold. I think it's very unlikely that there's a package or a player out there that would warrant giving up those two guys. But ultimately, aside from that, take your pickings, man. I think the Blue Jays should absolutely be aggressive. And here's one thing that I will preface. I know right now it's July, the Blue Jays are doing great. The trade deadline's around the corner. I will advise Blue Jays fans to temper their expectations a bit because here's one thing that we've seen under this third wild card format is that the trade deadline has
Yeah.
been a seller's market.
Yeah.
Every year, it's been a seller's market. The 2 years the Blue Jays were contending, we were disappointed by the lack of additions.
Yeah.
And last year, when they weren't contending, we were all pleased by their returns that they got for their
Right.
players. That would signal that under this format, there's just more teams that think they can contend. There's less sellers. And because of that, seller prices go up. And when
Yeah.
seller prices go up, that limits your ability to go out there
Yeah.
and make moves, especially if you're a team that is sort of operating at a deficit prospect wise if you're the Blue Jays. So I think there's definitely enough there where they can make a significant move, a few significant moves at the deadline to patch their holes. But I will temper the Blue Jays fans' expectations on that. I mean, obviously, we're only 3 years into this thing. We have to see how it plays out over a longer term. Maybe this is the year where the tide turns, but ultimately, I do want to throw that in there to caution fans from getting their hopes too high up. But I definitely think that what we've mentioned, front of the line starter, everyday righty bat, and a reliever. I think that absolutely that should be on the wish list and attainable for the Blue Jays.
Yeah. Completely agree. Fans, let us know in the comments who you want the Jays to get at the deadline or who you think they will get. Moving on to the other key players outside of George Springer that we need to talk about on the Toronto Blue Jays, and it ranges from overperforming expectations to also underperforming expectations. But we'll start, since we're keeping it positive, we'll start with the guys that are overperforming, and that top of that list has to be Ernie Clement. I mean, this guy's on pace to have a near 6-WAR year, and I mean, give me my flowers whenever you want, people. But I was on the early Clement train last year, if you were watching the Blue Jay Center podcast. And I was on the early Clement train this year. Yes, on multiple occasions, I probably said he's the odd man out. And that's just by proxy. He's a utility guy who, is, high 20s, breaking out late in his career, and you're not supposed to expect this guy to, keep this level of form. But to this point of this season, he has a 3-WAR, and he's easily an everyday guy in this lineup, and another guy that just flies under the radar. Rob.
He's been really good. He's been really good to the point where I've low-key been thinking some things that maybe people would would not think fondly of what I've been thinking, but with the way he's been playing, and obviously you have Andres Gimenez locked up. I mean, do you really need to overpay for Bo Bichette this offseason? I mean, that's the kind of thought that I've been
Yeah.
storing in my mind lately. And
Yeah.
here's the thing, and I hate to do this, but Ernie's had a higher WAR than Bo Bichette since 2023. We're coming up on 3 full seasons, 1 year of which Ernie Clement barely played in 2023, and all of a sudden their WAR numbers are very similar. Obviously, Ernie doesn't have the offensive peaks that Bo Bichette had, but here's the thing: Bo Bichette hasn't really had the offensive peaks that Bo Bichette has had for a
Yeah.
couple years now, right? So obviously, Ernie is superior defensively. He adds more value with his legs, more positional versatility. I mean, this is obviously an off-season debate, but ultimately, this is a testament on how good Ernie Clement has been because Bo
Right.
has had a
Right.
nice bounce back here. He has been a valuable part of this team, and this team is absolutely much better when Bo Bichette is out there. But Ernie Clement, I mean, he's making some noise. That's all I'll say. He's making some noise. I mean, yesterday's error was notwithstanding. That's a completely uncharacteristic play. Usually, Ernie's
Right.
very short-handed at third, and he's clutch too. I mean, obviously, it helps that Anthony Volpe is playing short for the Yankees, who just like his a childhood hero is awful at playing shortstop for the New York
Yeah.
Yankees and gets
Yeah.
praised. But yeah, no, I'm for the Ernie Clement train. I was a little skeptic at the beginning. I thought last year, yeah, it was all great and all, but ultimately I wasn't really the biggest believer. I'm on the Ernie Clement train. He should be playing every day, whether that's at third base or at second. He's an everyday player at this point. He's sold me. I'm sold.
Yep, I completely agree. And you can have both. You can have both Ernie and Bo Bichette, so hopefully the Jays can have both. But
Yeah, no, for sure. If you can get both, I'm just saying like maybe that plays into your leverage negotiations. You know what I mean with Bo.
right.
Hey, we
Yeah.
don't have to overpay for you.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it, kind
Oh,
of
I
thing.
completely agree. I mean, when I said at the beginning of the season that because you got Aaron Judge Jimenez, you definitely don't need to pay Bo Bichette. And that didn't even factor into whether or not Ernie Clement was going to be an everyday player. So Ernie's just making the case much easier. Sticking with positive, Max Scherzer's back, and he's now had 2 starts, better than his first start as a Toronto Blue Jay. And he's looked pretty good. Not great. Obviously not, previous Max Scherzer, but 4th starter,
Oh yeah.
competent for sure.
Oh yeah.
And a big game against the Yankees and putting up a good start is one of the most important metrics that you can be measured by. And he did exactly that.
Yeah, no, well, my confidence level in Max Scherzer at this point has everything to do with availability. I think in terms of
Right.
the role that we need him to have, in terms of being a legitimate back end starter, which is what he is, I think that he proved the other night that he's clearly capable of still doing that in a big game. We ramped up. Obviously, he made that one mistake to Jazz Chisholm, but outside of that, he was fantastic. I mean, his stuff. I mean, obviously, he was not Cy Young Scherzer, but
Right.
the fastball looked good. The velo was there. Got a ton of swing and miss. Got a little favorable calls from Blue behind the plate, but we'll take it. I think even in that Cleveland start, he made a big mistake to Gabriel Urias. I can't even remember his name. On the Guardians, who had that 2-run double. But outside of that, I mean, through 2 starts, the thumb has felt good, and he's looked the part of a guy who's more than capable of giving the Blue Jays 5 innings and a shot to win, which is all you can ask for as a 5th starter. And is it a good contract? No, it's never going to be a good contract. He's not going to pitch enough to warrant the $15.5 million.
Yeah.
And obviously, every start you're holding your breath. I mean, literally, he's a guy that any day now he could go back on the IL, and that could be it. It could be
Right.
it not only for his tenure as a Blue Jay, but for his career. And
Right.
but the idea of watching a first ballot Hall of Famer, I mean, Monday, watching that game and just watching him pitch and pitch well and take down the Yankees lineup that has been good. Despite the fact that it's prime Barry Bonds and a few other just guys, but
Right.
there's still a good lineup. And the fact that Max Scherzer went out there and pitched the way he did, I mean, that inspires a ton of confidence. I mean, I have the utmost confidence in Max Scherzer in a big game now. Moving forward in a September big game against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium in Fenway, playoff game, wild card game if it gets
Right.
there. I'm with it, man. I think that you're getting great value from that 5th starter if he's healthy.
Yeah, I completely agree. When healthy, there should be nothing to worry about on a Max Scherzer start day. And that's huge. And that's so massive for this Jays team. So hopefully that can continue the rest of the way, or at least just be available in October. Sticking to positives, Alejandro Kirk obviously still deserves his flowers. We don't have to go into him. We spent all last podcast basically praising him, so I wanted to just bring him up so that people are aware. You should check out our last podcast to hear what we had to say about Alejandro Kirk's resurgence. A couple of guys on the other end. Vladdy, we're just not there yet. Vladdy's been fine. He's been good. He has not been $500 million, and it just needs to be addressed. where's your worry meter? I feel like we ask this question often on this podcast, just because we're not worried about him not being a very good player, but I'm talking about, are we at all worried that he will have a 160 OPS plus resurgence eventually this year?
Whether or not he'll finish with that number, that's hard to
Right,
suggest now because obviously you have to go into an absolute tear, which he did that last year. So
right,
I'm leaving the door open, but ultimately I'm 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 not concerned. But to me, like I just hear people talking about how this Vlad season, like when is Vlad's eventually gonna come out of it, and he's not having a characteristic Vlad type year. I mean, no, that's not true. The reality is this has been sort of par for the course for Vlad,
right.
and
This
the
is
problem
Vlad.
is that he's had ups and downs to the point where we haven't seen a baseline average year that often. We've seen a top five hitter in baseball, MVP candidate Vlad. We've also seen lower WAR than Davis Schneider Vlad a couple of years ago, where
Right,
like he was tearing everyone's hair out, right? But we haven't really seen an average Vlad season too often. And to me, the thing is, when you look at his baseball reference page, what he's sort of having this year is a bit of an average Vlad season. This is kind of
yep,
what you can expect in a 162 body of work from Vlad. And unfortunately, it is unfortunate because that's not $500 million worth. But
right,
regardless, we don't have to go dive into that right now. I do think that though, like always, the baseball savant page suggests that there are good things to come, and we've seen a bit of a power surge kind of recently. I think that you look at the power numbers. I think through June it was
right,
actually pretty good. I think he hit I want to say 6 home runs the month of June, 5 home runs. So if you hit 5 home runs a month, it doesn't seem like a lot, but that's 30 plus in a season, right? So I am hopeful still that Vlad will be definitely better than what we've seen to this point, which has been really good. It's been
right.
a good player. It's not 2023 Vlad, which was well, what the hell is this? He's still on pace to have 4.5 to 5 win season,
Right.
which is really good. The fact that that is sort of a underwhelming-ish season for Vlad speaks to how good his floor is. But I am confident that we will see a better version than this. Will we see 160 OPS plus? No, I don't think so because I'm just not. It's not who Vlad's been in a given year. But I do think that the stuff that looks good, I do think that we will see better production. If he finishes the season 140, 145 OPS plus, 4.5, 5 wins, I think that's a good year. It's a
Yep.
good year for Vlad.
Yep, I completely agree. And finishing off the key players section is Jeff Hoffman. He has now gone 6 straight appearances, not allowing a run. And in June, he has pitched in 10 innings. He's made an appearance in 12 games. He has a 1.8 ERA with 13 Ks. Jeff Hoffman is back. And
Yep.
as to what everybody has pointed to when you're trying to defend Jeff Hoffman, it was the multiple innings usage that the Jays employed him in the first month of the year. That hasn't happened over the course of the last month, and I think that should continue. It might mean you use Chad Green in the 8th inning in some games when Jimmy Garcia is not available, which he is tonight, but we'll get into that later. It might mean you use Brandon Little in the 8th inning, but I think to keep Jeff Hoffman at Jeff Hoffman level, the level that you were acquiring in the offseason, you need to keep him to a 1 inning limit. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, like that was a little bit excessive what they were doing at the beginning of the year. And I'm willing to admit I've been hard on Jeff Hoffman on this program because I do think that it's not so much to do necessarily with Jeff Hoffman because I do think that Jeff Hoffman has been better than his numbers suggest. I do think that the under the hood numbers are good. The swing and miss stuff is there. He projects to be very good moving forward, despite the fact that he's had a rough season to this point overall. I think that to me, my sort of thing was that we always criticize Jordan Romano for almost blowing saves, and yet when Jeff Hoffman does blow saves, we have the excuses come up. That's to me what irritated me. But I'm a Jeff Hoffman believer. I think that what he's done lately is sort of what you can expect moving forward. I think, like I said, all the under the hood stuff looks good. I think that they did maybe not do him the best favors by making him go multiple
Right.
innings early on in the year. I have confidence in Jeff Hoffman. Whether or not he's your full time closer, maybe that I still have to see a little bit more. I would say because this is the first go around, and so far it hasn't always been rainbows and sunshine. But I do have confidence that he is going to be a big part of this pen at the back end moving forward the rest of the way. I think that it's great that he's having a bit of a bounce back month of June. Hopefully, he keeps it up in July as well.
Yeah. So speaking of injury updates, to supplement this Blue Jays lineup and pitching staff, some good news actually. Jimmy Garcia, like I said, is back tonight. that is your 8th-inning guy / Jeff Hoffman replacement when Jeff Hoffman's not available. So that is massive. Hopefully he is back. Hopefully he's going to play at the form that he was playing at before he hit the IL. Speaking of returns, Dalton Varsho and Anthony Santander are expected back within either this week or next week. Again, massive additions to your lineup, assuming they can get back to the form that they were playing at before they hit the IL. Santander obviously needs to be better than what he was before he hit the IL, but he's had plenty time off, so hopefully, he's been able to fix the things that was causing him the issues in the beginning couple months of the season.
I'm hopeful that perhaps, maybe this is an optimistic way of looking at it, but I still have confidence that Anthony Santander can be good for this team. I think that, perhaps he may have been a victim of a guy who traditionally always gets off the slow starts. Combine that with the fact that he is a major acquisition for a team with high expectations. Combine that with the fact that prior to going on the IL, he may have been playing through some stuff that may have physically ailed him. So perhaps all those things are most explainable to his slow start rather than the fact that he's just not a good player anymore. Because obviously that'd be bad for the Blue Jays, not really this year, but moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm willing to hold out hope that perhaps now with some time off, some much needed R&R and recovery time, he can come back and be a lot better. And here's the thing too, I think the biggest reason to this is that he's coming to a Blue Jays lineup where he doesn't have to be
now he's got
carry
protection
in the middle of the order. Yeah, all of a sudden now he could just be your 5 or 6 hitter who can hit 40 bombs in the summer months like he has last year. Unfortunately, this injury has caused him to miss most of the summer months when he typically heats up. But hopefully, this time off can do him good, and he can be back to matching balls at the bottom of the Blue Jays order, middle to bottom of the Blue Jays order. That would be a real nice addition right there. I mean, obviously, I didn't mention this during the Ross Atkins segment, but I think that he mentioned the left-handed bat, or pardon me, the right-handed bat, because he is expecting power to come from the left-hand side from Anthony Santander. I think that was a big reason why he specifically mentioned a right-handed bat. So he's hopeful. Obviously, he has to be because he gave him a lot of money to hit a lot of bombs from the left-handed side. So I'm a little hopeful. I'm a little giddish that maybe after this break he can go back and look like Orioles Anthony Santander.
Yeah, I hope the same, because adding 44 home runs to your lineup, even last year, would have meant significant difference results in the season. You would have been 7th in home runs last year had you added that to your lineup. So yeah, he is the literal difference between us being middle to pack in home runs, which we are right now, to being a top 10 team in home runs, which you need to be when you head into the postseason series. We won't have time for the preseason over-unders check-in today, so we'll do that on Sunday, because I want to finish off the show with getting fans hyped for the rest of July. You want to know when you should check into the Toronto Blue Jays? I've said it on multiple podcasts previously that those were the times to check in. Those times aren't as good as right now. This is the rest of your July schedule after you finish with the Yankees tomorrow night. You got the Los Angeles Angels, who are a 500 team. You got the Chicago White Sox, who are competing for the worst team ever. You got the Oakland Athletics, who are competing for the worst franchise ever.
Whoa, the Athletics.
Right, the Athletics, sorry. Yeah, that's right.
Not the Vegas, not the Oakland.
Right. Just the future Las Vegas Athletics, who probably won't receive the same fandom that the Vegas Golden Knights did. San Francisco Giants, just above 500. The Yankees
After the All-Star break.
Right, but this isn't July. Yeah. You got the New York Yankees.
I'm pointing it out to the fans. That series starts after the All-Star break. There's a break in between.
The New York Yankees, who, as we just saw, we beat them twice and we had to come back in both of them. Detroit, obviously the leaders in the AL, but you know what that is a good series for? A testament to where you are as a team heading into the trade deadline. Then you got,
I'll be going to that series too, so that might affect your chances.
Oh right, it'll be in. Is it in Comerica or here?
It's in Detroit.
God, yeah. So if we do lose that series, just know it has nothing to do with the Toronto Blue Jays, actually, and it was Rob's fault. And then we got Baltimore to finish off July, who, of course, will be sellers at the deadline because they stink this year, and Rob predicted it. I knew he was going to mention it anyway, so I might as well give him the shut-up before he even...
I was going to be humble, actually. I was going to be humble, but I'm glad you did it for me.
Yeah, that's it. So how... I mean, obviously, we just lost to the White Sox, so people could rebuttal with that. But that was an outlier in what's been 2 months of fantastic baseball for the Toronto Blue Jays. And now you finally hit the easy part of the schedule, which you haven't had to this point. So are you expecting the best month of the year right now?
This month of the year, it's tough because the last 2 months have been pretty damn good. It's hard to live up to that standard, but ultimately, like you mentioned, there's a lot of winnable games on that schedule, a lot of opportunity for the Blue Jays to ascend what's already been a cushion in the American League wildcard. And hopefully, a lead in the AL East. I mean, obviously, I poo-pooed it. I talked about how it's irrelevant and meaningless, but ultimately, it's good to hopefully be atop of the AL East. They could do so tonight with a win against the Yankees. Unfortunately, this podcast, will, like I mentioned, will drop after, so we won't know the result. You guys will when you're watching this, but we're all hoping for the best. First pitch in just under 20 minutes. So, Jose Barrios, let's see it, buddy. Let's get a series win against the Yanks. Let's get it.
Exactly. And thankfully, another lefty is not available tonight in Trent Grisham, so that should help Jose Barrios' chances of mowing down that lineup. Fans, before you click off the podcast, please let us know what you want us to discuss for the trade deadline show on Sunday. And like I said, we will have the preseason over-unders check-in as well. James is leading the pack. I won't tell you of how many he's got right, but he is leading the pack in terms of predicted outcomes for this Blue Jays season. So comment your questions below. For Rob Penteleman, I'm Cole Whiston. Jimmy was behind the scenes. You're watching the Blue Jays Center podcast presented by the Sick Podcast Network.
Blue Jays.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Blue Jays Center on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.